The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Yes, coming to you cordless, everybody, up to the satellite and down to your bed. That's where we are. It's Thursday, March 28th, 2024, and we are live at 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Sydney Opera House, and 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time here in Minneapolis, where the weather is shit. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters Tonight. This is episode number 102, if you're keeping score at home. Yeah, weather's crappy. I'm in Minneapolis. It's shit. 4 months of the year. Other 8 months, fantastic. Just fantastic. So we are live on, let me see, Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Twitch, Trollo, and audio only on Blog Talk Radio, where we're a radio show. Yeah, and live. Yeah, who would know it, Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day today. Our guest tonight is Jas Shaw. He is the Salem media writer and the weekend editor of HotAir.com. He writes about conservative politics and UFOs. And I talk about conservative politics and UFOs. So it's like it's a match made in heaven. So we taped that earlier this afternoon. He's our guest tonight. We're off tomorrow. We do this Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. Central live. And then, of course, all the episodes are archived on all the platforms. We recommend Rumble because we figure, honest to God, YouTube is probably going to ban us sooner or later. We already got canned by Facebook. And don't even get me started on that. I've had trouble with these people for years. I'm not even fighting it. Screw them. There's plenty of places to watch this. You don't need to go to your grandpa's Facebook page or something like that. Would that make me your grandpa? I don't know. Probably. I'd probably be your grandpa, you know. Like I'm card carrying member of the old pervert society. That's me. So yeah, we don't do a show on Friday. No for Friday. Next week, Monday, it's the month in review panel. That's Don Zero, Tim Conaway, and Larry Newman. We shoot the shit for an hour and a half about what happened this month. It's basically it's a coffee clutch for men. That's what it is. You know, it's like one of our very first callers on the show when we started. This was in August. Called up and said, "You know what I like about this is it's exactly like how the guys talk at the coffee shop." And God bless that guy because that's exactly precisely was the idea. That's what I'm trying to do. And so maybe notice and there's a disclaimer at the top of the show. I have a little bit of a potty mouth. Now, the guests usually will not join me in the profanity, and that's fine, that's okay. No problem with me, but yeah, but I join myself in the profanity. So that's what I do. So after next Monday, the month in review panel, we're taking Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're taking the rest of the week off. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this. I'll just let you in on a little secret. We do this every month. We take the last 3 days off of every month because we need the time to get our shit together. And when I say we, I mean I, because I am the only person doing this here. I do not have a producer. I do not have a guest booker. I don't have a director. And so I'm doing all that stuff. And so I take 3 days off every month to basically reload reload the gun. That's what I'm doing. So we don't I'll be blunt with you. We don't have a lot of guests confirmed for April. We have one huge guest. Kathleen Marden is joining us on April 22nd. I'm excited about that. She is the niece of Betty Hill, Betty and Barney Hill fame. Basically, the first, for our practical purposes, like verified abduction phenomena in the United States, 1961. And you're saying, well, Jim, they can't verify that. Well, the thing is, here's the deal. It's not just that their stories were the same, even though they were hypnotized separately, and it was the very first time hypnotism was ever used to reconstruct abduction memories, but there was actual physical evidence of what happened. Uh, when we'll talk about that when um, Kathleen gets there. So Kathleen was Betty's niece. She was, I think, 16 years old at the time of the abduction. She went on to devote the rest of her life. She's a professional UFO researcher, and she's written several books. And also she wrote books with Stanton Friedman, who passed away, I think, 6 years ago now, if I'm right. And Stanton was, when he was alive, was arguably the premier UFO researcher in the world on the planet. And a part of the reason he had so much credence is because he was a working nuclear physicist. The guy had very serious scientific credentials. And also he pointed out, and you're talking about evidence here. I will write this out again, that Betty Hill's story about the star map that she was shown by the aliens that ultimately checked out years and years later. I mean, okay, she saw it in 1961. She talked about it in 1965, and I think they found the Zeta Reticuli double star system in 2006. So let me do some quick math. What is that? 45 years later. Stanton said this, and he's right. He said that basically the fact that she was the only single person on the planet, a New Hampshire housewife who knew where the star system was, 37 light years away, would was basically it's the smoking gun of ufology. It proves this phenomenon. I agree with him. I think it does too. You just don't pull that out of your butt. You don't. Anyway, so yeah, she's coming on, and we got a whole bunch of people we're working on, but I know that by the time on April 8th, when we come back after our mostly 1 week off, I'll have plenty to tell you. So, so Jazz is joining us in a minute. So what happened today? So I'll tell you what happened today. Um, I guess all right. So I do this 4 nights a week. Now before I did this, I did audio podcasts and radio shows. I was the editor in chief of Kong News, and they're a sponsor, by the way. And we're gonna talk about them in a few minutes before we play our interview. Um, and so I've been doing this for quite a few years now. I did almost 400 podcasts and radio shows for Kong, and so now we've hit 100. This is 102nd show. And I have a lot of I live in Minneapolis. Seriously, this I live at we are in Elon Omar's congressional district here. And also I both live and work here. The studio's here. My house is very close by. I did that on purpose. I don't want to travel through 5 miles when it's snowing. Like, that's bullshit. And so all my friends are liberal. It's an extremely liberal place. All right, fine. That's okay. But I have friends who ask me all the time, how come you don't have any more liberals on? You should balance out the discussion. And here's my answer to that. We don't need a balanced discussion because you can hear liberals fucking anywhere. The whole mainstream media is slanted to the left. You can hear them anywhere. So I don't feel I need to do any well, I am doing counter programming. That's what I'm doing. I'm not having the liberals on purpose. But I've always said there are certain liberals, and Jazz and I actually touched on this today. My contention is that 20% um, of the Democratic Party is currently batshit crazy, but they've taken over the party. That's the problem. The traditional liberals, like the people, hell, I was one of them until roughly 15, 20 years ago. And they've taken over the party, the lunatics. And I don't know why the traditional liberals have allowed this, but they have. Okay, so fine. So I've always said there's certain liberals I would have on the show, like for example Bill Maher. I'd still have him on. I'd argue with him. I don't agree with a lot of stuff, the majority of the stuff he thinks, but I could talk to him. You know, uh, I used to think that maybe Rachel Maddow and Jon Stewart were in the same category that even though I disagree with them a lot, I could have a conversation. We could talk. I'm starting to think that isn't the case, and it all has to do with this thing about Ronna McDaniel being hired and ceremoniously fired after literally only working for 20 minutes, literally, at NBC News because everyone over there, all the on-air talent got their undies in a bundle because they hired her. Oh, and by the way, before I go on here, I should point out, you want to join on the show today, this is a good time to do it. Now, the interview is not live, so if you call during the interview, I can't take your call. It's about 40 minutes, and so I can't take your call during the interview. But before and after, it's a three-part show, like now, or when the interview's done, you want to call in, that's fine. So you do that three different ways, or actually two and a half. I don't know how you want to do it. You can call in with your webcam. You got to go put the browser in your device to this address, gemini.com/call. Doesn't matter what your device is. You can do it on your cell phone. It's easier than making a FaceTime call. I'm not kidding. It is. So what you do is you go to that web page. There's a giant big blue button at the top of it. You click on it. You're in a preview screen to check your camera and mic, or if you have multiple cameras on your device for whatever reason, because you love looking at yourself, you can pick one and then you push join and you're in the video queue. It's as simple as that. I put you on now. We are supposedly, according to Talkers Magazine, this is the first talk show in America that takes video phone calls. We've been doing it now for 8 months. I'll be honest with you. We don't get a lot of video phone calls. I'm starting to think the reason is people do not want their face on the screen. Simple as that. Okay, fine. Now, as of last month, we got this. You can call up with your phone, audio only, just like dial in a regular radio station. The number is 563-999-3435. That's 563-999-3435. And we get a few of these. People do call. So this is good. I mean, so if you do not want to put your face on the screen, call up this way. The other thing you can do is you can text me live during the show at this number right here, 408-458-5088. I have a screen off to the side here that gets your text messages, and I will read them or respond to them. Okay, so I had to interrupt what I was doing there to tell you that, because the thing is, yeah, I can take your phone calls now if you want. Okay, so I was talking about the fact about Rachel Maddow and Jon Stewart. Why I'm changing my mind about the fact I could potentially talk to these people. This thing that happened at NBC News hiring Ronna McDaniel and then firing her. I mean, these people could not be more prissy babies. And Rachel Maddow gets on MSNBC, and this is the real amazing thing. It wasn't her. It was Nicole Wallace, who's supposedly a Republican, supposedly. And and she says, that we don't want that crap. I'm paraphrasing here. We don't want that crap on what she said, and this was the actual quote: "Our sacred airwaves." Give me a fucking break. Sacred, yeah, right, yeah. You guys pushed the Russian collusion thing for 3 years until it ran out of gas. You know, it's like, I mean, seriously, has there been more lies propagated by more people ever? And you're talking about your sacred airwaves and you can't stand listening to some woman. Well, she denied the 2020 election. Yeah. Well, yeah, so what? It's been pointed out all sorts of people denied all sorts of elections, and they aren't all Republicans, you know? Maybe you should ask her why. Maybe you should try that. Oh no, we can't do that. That'd be terrible. So, at any rate, the rumors going around now, John Nolte wrote about this at Breitbart today. The rumors going around that some VP at NBC News is actually trying to get Chuck Todd fired, and they hired a Republican fixer guy to badmouth him on social media, get the process started. They hired a Republican to do it. This is, I mean, you cannot. This is hilarious. And seriously, what are they afraid of? I mean, it's like they're just thinking, it's like, now I'm gonna get to something here just a minute here about the um uh, recent polling about Republicans and Democrats. And I even alluded to this in the show description tonight. But I don't. Now I'm starting to think I can't talk to these people. So Jon Stewart gets on his show he does once a week on Mondays. Oh wow, God, good for you. You know, he gets on a show and he's talking about Trump about the fact that people say, well, everyone's bitching about the fact that it was a victimless crime what he did with the real estate prices in New York. And he says, no, that's not victimless. That's what. Well, I've said. Here's the deal. He got fined $500 million essentially for filling out a few forms wrong. That's basically what I got fined for. And the hilarious things, I know this is like that didn't make the mainstream news, so maybe you haven't heard this before. Is it turns out that when Jon Stewart tried to sell his previous home, which was a penthouse in a building in Manhattan, he did exactly precisely the same thing. He had undervalued it by like 900% so that he could save money on taxes. And it's like then he turns around and says, well, and then his excuse when he's called on this, he said, well, yeah, at least I didn't make a bunch of mean tweets or something like that. I don't understand these people. So, all right, I'm moving on now. Uh, there is a report comes out today. A poll's done about Republicans and Democrats, and basically what it says is that Republicans or Democrats hate Trump more than Republicans hate Biden. And well, no shit, I mean, right now the polling for another poll came out, a Fox News poll came out today simultaneously. Uh, right now, uh, Trump is crushing it. I mean, if the election was today, it would probably be a landslide. Now, I don't know if that's going to hold. And also, we did a show here a couple weeks ago, and the show was called "Can Trump Still Fuck This Up?" And of course, I did not write the word up "fuck" out because I didn't want our of the people our distributors to actually have to deal with that. People can deal with that when they turn and listen to my potty mouth. But it was fairly well watched, and I think it's because of the title. I go out with I had lunch with some friends of mine a couple weeks ago. Once again, all liberals, all of them. They do ask me questions though because they know I do this, and I think differently than they do. And I did mention the fact that I still think this. There is a chance that Trump could stick his giant foot in his mouth and still screw this up. So far, it doesn't look like it. So far, he's playing this quite presidential. As I told those guys, and you have to understand this too. It's master the obvious shit, but still, it needs to be said. This is the very first time in his short political career that Trump has been ahead ever on polling or voting or anything. He pulled 2016 out of his ass, basically. No one was expecting that to happen. And it even looks like even his campaign wasn't. They weren't expecting to win. I don't think they'd ever admit that in a million years, but it does seem true. But right now, he's ahead. So the question is, does he know how to do this? Now, right now, it looks like he does. Right now, you're talking about optics. Um, this afternoon, actually, I think it just ended really. Uh, the president went to a fundraiser at Rockefeller Center with two previous presidents, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, where they were charging, get a load of this, to have your picture taken with all three presidents simultaneously, $100,000. Now, it's a fundraiser. They set a record. They apparently raised 25 million bucks at this one event. And so far, right now, and I don't know, now that number is probably pretty easy to verify. The Biden campaign says they've raised about twice as much money as the Trump campaign, but I gotta admit, I don't believe a single thing these people say anymore. I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if I don't think there's any way to verify it. But he showed up at this thing, and meanwhile, at the exact same time, Trump is at the funeral for this Diller, officer Diller that got shot in Manhattan, that got killed. And there you could not. I don't. Now I understand that the people put together the fundraiser. They probably can't reschedule it at such a short date. So I mean, in some ways they got screwed, but the optics of the former president going to a police officer's funeral while the current president is raising gobs of money with his celebrity friends could not be worse. It just couldn't. I mean, and I think this is going to come back to haunt them for a long time. I mean, right now, uh, the other thing that happened in the Fox News poll, they asked the people that are polling, what is Biden's primary accomplishment? And the thing that got the most votes was nothing. He has no primary accomplishment. That's what the people said. Yeah, so you're looking at an administration that can't seem to do anything right, anything. I mean, they fucked this up from the beginning. You know, I've said, and Bill O'Reilly agrees with me, and he's almost smarter than I am. He is. What am I doing? Who am I kidding? But he said the same thing I was saying before he was saying it, and that is, um, Biden is going to go down as the second worst president in American history. No one's ever going to beat James Buchanan. No, he has a lock on the worst, but Biden will go down as the second worst. And so Biden is getting his picture taken for $100,000 a shot, while Trump, who's now one of the 500 richest people on earth, with this with the sale of the stock to Truth Social, Trump went from barely making the billionaires club. I mean, the problem is you're talking about so much money; it's hard to actually track it and measure it. But there was reports that maybe he'd even fallen out of the billionaires club. That would be less than $1 billion, like 900 million. But then you're not a billionaire, you know, because of all this crap he's been going through. But with this one fell swoop of this company going public, now not only is he in the billionaires club, he's in the upper half of it. So, I think they figured he's worth $6.5 billion with the sale of the stock, or the stock wasn't sold to him; it was sold to the public, but he owns stock in the company. He's the primary shareholder. So it's not that Trump is poor by any means. He has way more money personally than Biden does, way more. But Biden, the optics of going to this fundraiser while Trump's at a police officer's funeral. I mean, Jesus Christ, you can't even make this shit up. You know. Meanwhile, CBS News, they're on and Norah O'Donnell's wearing a fantastic mustard pantsuit tonight. I mean, oh my God, just like she looks like a hot dog. You had to see it. Anyway, oh man, I'm terrible. Uh, so they're covering this story, and and now I want to give them a straight shift here. They did cover the fact that Trump was at the funeral. They did, and they had pictures of it too. But they put this story together, and to them, the big headline was that Biden has outraised Trump in funds 2 to 1. It's like it never occurred to them that by showing the pictures of Trump at the funeral and Biden at the fundraiser, that they were setting up an optics problem here. Apparently, that never occurred to them. All they occurred to them is that the end, starting and end of the story, the headline on the chyron on the bottom of the screen was Biden raises, shitloads of money. I don't know what it was. They didn't say that, but she looks like a hot dog. Oh man, just terrible. So finally, and I want to end with this before we go to the interview. Becky Noble at redstate.com. Now Jennifer Oliver O'Connell from Red State's on here regularly. And I have to warn you, this article is behind their paywall. So we're not going to link to it. You probably can't see it. I always go to the assumption that no one pays for anything. I pay for Red State, which is the reason. Actually, I pay for the whole town hall package, and that's the reason I can read it. But you probably can't. So, but I'm going to talk to you about what this is. The headline is Trump is Hitler working? New poll says Dems more afraid of Trump re-election than GOP is of Biden. And that's basically what the story is about the fact that all they ever do is talk about compare Trump to Hitler. And once again, even when Stewart comes back and tries to say, you are this, but what am I? You know, uh, he can't come up with anything. This is the part that I don't get. And Becky Noble talks about this in this article. The Democrats and liberals, if you want to lump them together, I don't know if you really should, but they're completely driven by emotion, and they can't give it up. They can't let it go. Trump is an evil, evil man, and he must be stopped. They won't tell you how he's evil. They won't tell you any evil things he's done. I can tell you off the top of my head at least half a dozen reasons I think Joe Biden should not be elected. Specific ones. Border issue, first of all. He should actually that's an impeachable offense. He should have been kicked out of office. They don't have the votes to do it, but he should have been kicked out of office for that. It's that they are deliberately letting these people in. There's absolutely no doubt about it at this point. And no doubt at all. They basically stopped even trying to hide it. They're deliberately letting these people into the country, and it's obvious that the the goal is to let them vote at some point. They want to apparently, Joe's already planning some executive order where, they all get amnesty, all of them, tens of millions of them. It's disgusting. Now, Trump says he's going to, boot all these people out of the country, but realistically, it's gonna be very, very difficult to do. Even if they made an attempt, I'd be surprised if they could even get half of them. They can't round them up. People hide. You can't tell by looking at somebody whether they're a Native, American citizen or not. You can't tell. So, yeah. But once again, I mean, that's only one example. Inflation issues. And that bothers me more than anything. We have Murray Sabrin on. We have economists on the show. Yeah, with 102 shows, I mean, I gotta say, we're batting way above our pay grade in terms of the quality of the guests we get. But here's the deal. And when they started this bullshit in 2021, anybody who had taken a regular Econ 101 course in college could have told them this was gonna lead to inflation. It was because they printed a shitload of money. When I said printed, they created it out of whole cloth very quickly, and that's how inflation starts. I mean, it's textbook. Literally, it's literally textbook. If you were a freshman econ student, you would read about this. And I'm on the frickin' tube, or then it was audio only at Kong News. I'm talking about the fact that, you're gonna create inflation. And then inflation happens, and they say, "Oh my god, how did that happen?" God, these people are stupid. I just like, I mean, there doesn't seem to any cause and effect toward their action. I'm really, really, down on this, and the thing is, I understand why people don't like Trump. I understand it, and yeah, the tweets are mean, and sometimes he says some really, really stupid smack shit. He does, but the thing is, I mean, it's plainly obvious to people now when they look back on the Trump years versus what's been happening now. Uh, and this is the reason people are switching sides. It is. The one interesting thing about the Fox poll that just came out was really the independents. The independents are totally breaking for Trump, and also the Democrats still have the black majority, the vast majority of the black voters, but still a lot of them have come over to Trump too. Now that's a recipe for disaster for them. If they can't, I mean, typically 85% of black people have voted Democratic. Right now, the split is about 60-40, and just by losing that 20%, they will probably lose the election. It's like people they can talk till they're blue in the face, and this is the thing. How is Trump evil? I mean, I read some tweet today that somebody said the real question is how anybody with a right mind could vote for this guy. He's talking about Trump. Like where? And he even said this. He said, how many mean tweets does he have to post? You don't understand. I don't care about the mean tweets. I don't care what he says. We have a disconnect in this country right now between people who who um, who base their opinion on the emotion of the moment and what people says, and then people who actually want to see what happens? Results. It's the difference between the talkers and the doers. Now the irony is here. I'm sitting here talking to you. You know, I'm not a right now. I'm not a doer. I would like to think I've done quite a lot of my life. I mean, I did not spend most of my life doing this. I didn't. So I would like to think I have some experience doing some stuff, but it's astonishing people who don't. And this is especially true. I'm going full circle here. People who are, especially in the news business, they talk and observe for a living. So they don't actually, most of them don't even run a newsroom. That's the thing. It's like most of the reporters, they've never even been in an administrative capacity in their own profession, let alone anywhere else or done anything. You know, I mean, people complain about Elon Musk. I want to point out, Elon Musk is launching rockets, and they are not. It is as simple as that. You know, you want to build a rocket, you go right ahead. Let's see how far you get with that. Yeah. I don't know, folks. This is gonna be a really interesting election. I mean, right now, starting on the 15th of April, Trump is gonna be tied up in court for a long time, most weekdays, you know? So, of course, that's all planned. And it is astonishing how many Democrats will tell you, no, this is not a coordinated effort. You don't understand. He is going to court because he's broken the law. Bullshit. Bullshit. Complete utter fucking bullshit. This thing that with Enderon and Letitia James and this thing he just got fined for this the evaluation of these properties. This on appeals court, this is going to get thrown out so hard, it's unbelievable. It was literally unconstitutional. I'm not just saying that. It was literally unconstitutional. The Eighth Amendment says you can't issue excessive fines. Well, fines for the type of thing they're doing are usually pegged to the amount of loss or fraud that occurred, and no one was defrauded any money, which means if the actual fraud amount is zero, he should have been fined zero. And he was fined $500 million. It's just complete, utter crazy shit. There's no way any reasonable court, and that's the thing, you had to get it on New York City. Because, I mean, New York City is, it's called a null jury. No, he's not going to, the local jury is going to convict him for sure because they hate his guts. Simple as that. All right, we're going to play our interview with Chad Shaw here, but before we do that, I'm going to put this on the screen. This is the front page of Conk News. Conk is our sponsor. It's at conk.com. Oh, now that's really interesting. That page just turned over just now, and I was going to say, Conk News every 3 hours goes out onto the internet and gets news from 75 different sources, and then compiles those stories and puts them on one single page. The front page here. This page is actually quite long. You can actually spend 2-3 hours reading this, but it changes every 3 hours. Now, not the whole thing, but most of it. All the older news is pushed to the bottom. This is all done by computers and algorithms, but it's still extremely fair. The pictures are from the articles that you're going to be reading. The headlines are not rewritten. And when you click through, you go directly to that story. There's no interstitial page, no advertisement, nothing. It's really, really cool. And also, and you'll like this, it's free. This is not behind a paywall, or you don't have to sign up. You don't even have to register to use this. You just go to conk.com. That's conk.com. Check this out. If you're news junkie, this is like paradise. Really. I use this regularly. I'm a former employer of this organization. I'm an employee. I'm proud to be associated with it. It's an extremely good product, and you don't have anything to lose here. So yeah, go to conk.com and check this out when you get a chance. Really appreciate that. So we're gonna play a little bumper music here. Alex K. He did the intros and bumpers for the show, and we appreciate it. And you're going to look at in 12 seconds, you're going to see Chad Shaw. Here we go. joining us from his home. I'm sorry, Jazz, you're in upstate New York, right?
Right.
Right. Oh, got it right. I remember it. Jazz Shaw, a weekend editor of hotair.com. My brother from another mother. How you doing?
Doing good. Well, as can be expected. Apparently, my memory's not very good anymore, but I already knew that because, but I was working and I got a little late start. I should have been here sooner.
No
My
problem.
apologies.
No problem. No problem. Hey, I want to address something you just posted like 3 hours ago. This thing about the fact that the New York Police Department asked members of the New York City Council not to come to Diller's funeral. You know. All right. So, all right, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here. So I've been reading about the World War II the last few days, which I find kind of fascinating because my deal is if somebody wrote it as a novel, it'd be implausible. No one would believe it. So, and what I've concluded is that, and I know this is like master the obvious shit. We've probably even talked about this before, but I think it just bears repeating directly. It seems to me that what the left is doing is exactly what the Nazis did, except they're accusing the right of doing it. What are your thoughts
Well,
on that?
it in a lot of ways, I mean, history does repeat it. Everybody says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. You know,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I think you're seeing a lot of that today, and we're and it covers a variety of topics, but in particular these days, the stuff that's you mentioned the stuff that's going on in New York. That's not just happening in New York. It just gets the most attention because there's a lot of media there,
Yeah. Right.
But it's happening all over the country, and it repeats. And I think a word I won't use, flows downhill, and it starts with policies inside the swamp in Washington, and it drains downward. And most of the things we're seeing today, unfortunately, are not good things that are trickling down. It's not trickle down economics; it's trickle down crap. And yeah, that's it. It just repeats over and over. But there are bright spots. Like I was just talking to somebody about all the problems we're having, particularly down in New York City, but it's happening in a lot of places with squatters. You've seen that rise.
Yeah.
A lot of illegal migrants that are engaging in squatting and trying to claim squatters' rights and taking people's homes. Down in Florida, just yesterday, the governor signed a bill where they changed those laws entirely. And now, if you're a homeowner and you find squatters, you make one call, fill out one form online, and a sheriff comes and they arrest them. And they made it a felony for them to do more than $1,000 damage in the home, and they removed them immediately. Whereas in New York City, squatters have been there for as long as 2 years, and the cops just say nothing we can do about it. They've claimed squatters' rights. That's the law. Well, obviously there's something they could do about it, but they don't want to.
Yeah. So, but where did these squatter laws come from in the first place? I mean, it's absurd to give the right to somebody to walk into your home, just take it. I mean, how did that even get on the books? Am
Very
I?
old laws. Sorry, the cat's being
No, that's
annoying.
all right. I love the cats. I love them.
Very, very old laws where there were in olden times misunderstandings when people would go into a new area and they'd find some place that was kind of empty, but it turns out somebody actually had a deed or property rights to that land. And then the owner would come back and discover they were there and say, wait, I've got this deed. And that person, if they had a deed, but then those things got misinterpreted and then reapplied and the laws were changed. And it was basically like, well, it's acquisition, is nobody was there. So the person who came in, if they've been there in New York, it's 30 days. If you can stay there for 30 days without getting caught and thrown out, suddenly you obtain a whole new set of rights. And that's never what the laws were intended for in the first place.
No, that's absurd.
It is absurd.
So, okay, so this Officer Diller guy gets shot by a guy who like had 20 priors or something like that.
21, yep.
And then uh and I find this almost hilarious. So Donald Trump's going to the funeral and Joe Biden isn't. Wow.
Right.
Great leadership, man. It's like terrific. That's fantastic.
Well, that would be a really bad set of political optics for Biden. It's very good political optics for Trump. But more importantly, the members of the city council, some of them had apparently mentioned to a reporter on the radio that, they felt really terrible about this, and the funeral was coming up, and one of them at least sort of suggested they were going to come there and see, if they wanted to give an address. And the
It was
the
the
NY
Sergeants
the
Association.
it was the
Yeah,
Sergeants Association, part of the NYPD set of unions,
right.
just came out and told everybody, "Don't show up. You're not
Yeah,
wanted here. If you show up here, it's not going to go well. You better stay home."
yeah. The
And I
announcement was
was,
about as vicious as you could get on paper, I thought.
oh, it was. And I was reminded very much of, there was an incident back in 2015. Anybody that doesn't remember, you can just go Google it, when there was another police officer who was shot and killed by a repeat offender, and his funeral was scheduled. And Bill de Blasio had the nerve to come show up uninvited and just walk up to the podium. And all of the NYPD officers that were there when the one family member was speaking before that, they turned around and they turned their backs on him. And that was a moment captured on camera. He was trying to talk, and all the cops turned around, just turned their backs on him. They didn't get rude, they didn't throw things at him, but they were like, "Nope, you're not welcome here,
Yeah.
because this is your fault. These are your policies. This is your fault." And if any of the council members try to show up, I think they're going to get the same thing.
I'm getting back to this thing about the comparison to the Nazis. Where does anybody even get the idea that any of this stuff's ever going to work? Jazz, I used to be a liberal, and I had a slow conversion, and my conversion basically ended up because I finally realized that liberal policies don't work at all. Now, all right, I'm a stupid person, but at some at some point, at some point, you just can't avoid it. I mean, it's like none of this shit actually works. This has only been going on for 3 years, and it's already the whole freaking nation seems to be going in the dumpster.
Yeah, I didn't have your experience. I've never been. I was raised in.
Yeah, well, you're smart.
Let's face it. I'm a primarily white-looking country boy who grew up in farm country, and I was raised by a World War II veteran. And it, I just grew up in a conservative household, and I went into the military, and that's what molded me in my early days. But I did marry an extremely progressive liberal Democrat.
Well, I did too. So all right, I'm with you
So
on
I
that.
get exposed to that a lot, and we don't talk politics a ton, but we have conversations. So I get to see some of those reactions. But even she's pretty much aghast at everything that's been going on for the last couple of years, and she's like, "Oh my God," because I show her some headlines, and she watches the liberal news, and they don't talk about these things. And then I'll swing my laptop around, and I'll like, "Did you see this?" And she's like, "What?" You know. And I think she's even starting to change. I don't know that she's going to turn around and vote for Trump this year, but she definitely sounds like she's not going to vote for Biden. She
Well, the
might vote
problem
for
is this is not what
RFK
you'd call
Jr.
this. None of this is what you'd call traditional liberalism. That's the
No,
way I look at it. And the other thing is, I got the same thing. I got almost all my friends. I mean, I'm living in one of the most liberal cities in America. Are liberals, and I don't bother to talk about the news because they literally, David Strom and I have talked about this numerous times. They don't believe it. You can actually tell them what's going on, some of the stuff that's going on, and it's so outrageous. Reasonable people don't even think it would happen. That's part of the thing.
that's certainly part of it. I wouldn't disagree with that. And like I said, my own wife gets surprised when I show her,
Yeah,
because if you get all your news from MSNBC and CNN, it's not that they're saying the opposite. It's that they're ignoring most of these stories. It's
right,
selective coverage.
right.
And a lot of people don't hear about the things that are going on, but increasingly they get to see it in their own lives on a day-to-day basis, I think. And it is starting to sink in. I think that's being reflected in the poll numbers. But getting back to what you said a moment ago, classic liberalism, which and there was tons of that in the hippie era, when I was coming up. Classic liberalism opposed war, wanted peace. Classic liberalism was dedicated to free speech, you know,
Yeah.
because there was an era in the 50s and whatnot when liberal speech was, not very popular and might have been suppressed at times,
Right.
and now it's just been totally reversed. Now it's like liberals control the media at the moment. They control the government. They control the messaging, what gets out, what doesn't get out. And it's like, oh, well, we have to go keep funding Ukraine. Well, what happened to the same people who were out there marching in the streets saying we had to get out of Vietnam,
Yeah.
who were opposed to endless wars?
I know, it's hilarious almost.
And and that's not just a liberal thing. I'll make a confession to you. My wife and I both, back in 2003, we were some of those people who were out in the streets carrying signs opposing the invasion of Iraq because it made no sense to me.
Uh-huh.
I'd seen no evidence that Iraq had anything to do with 9/11 or
Right.
that they had weapons of mass destruction. And I'm not bragging, I'm not happy about it, but we went in, everybody saw what happened. Endless war dragging on for years in Iraq. Never any weapons of mass destruction found. Saddam Hussein was a terrible person, obviously,
Yeah.
did terrible things, but he wasn't involved in that. And we were sold a bill of goods, you know? And I think anybody from either side could have rightly opposed that war. And why are we supporting an ongoing war in Ukraine right now? It's like, oh, you're a Putin stooge. If you, no, Ukraine's losing. They're getting their asses kicked.
Yeah.
We might still be able to end this and get Putin to back off. You just might have to give up some land, redraw the maps a little bit. Not the first time that's happened, right?
Right. Right.
But suddenly that's an unpatriotic, terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, screw you.
And and the amazing thing is I still remember back in 2001, 2002 when, okay, so 9/11 happens, it's absolutely terrible, and then the government announced, okay, our solution to this is we're going to attack Iraq. What? They had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember just scratching my head. It's like, huh? What are you talking about? And the other thing that you're alluding to too, which is really important in today's times, and that is, okay, Saddam Hussein's Sudan is an asshole. But like you said, he did not have weapons of mass destruction, and the mainstream press tries to tries to paint everything as either or. He's either the most evil person on the planet or he's fine. And the fact of the matter is life is in between, you know?
Life is very much in between. There are lots of bad actors out there on the stage around the world. The president of Venezuela, or I should put that in scare quotes,
Yeah, right.
President Maduro. I've been covering him for years and years. He's a horrible person. He's done terrible things. He's never directly made an attack on the United States or our interests. He mostly just abuses his own people and some of his neighbors and whatnot. So, do I think we should be going to war against Venezuela? No, I don't. I think we should have sanctions on them like we did, and except Biden lifted a bunch of them, and and not encourage him. But no, that's not our business. We can't be the world's policeman. I don't apologize for saying that. I wasn't wild about the idea of war in Afghanistan, but we had good intelligence, which turned out to be true, at least at times, that that's where the architect of 9/11 was. And George Bush, to his credit, he offered him three different deals for those who have shorter memories and don't remember. He came out originally and just said, "Hey, turn over this guy to us, and if you do, we're gonna give you all sorts of money, and we're gonna put infrastructure in there, and you'll get foreign aid." And they were like, "No, we're not going to do that." And he said, "All right, well, I got a second offer. Just keep your people away from the area that we have located where we believe he is, and we'll just get out of our way, leave us alone, and we'll go in and we'll handle it ourselves, and we'll still give you some goodies." And their leader came back and said, "No, we can't do that." And it was only at that point that Bush was like, "You're really not going to like option 3." And that's basically what he said. And
Yeah.
so we went in, but I give Bush credit. I think it had to be done. I, I falsely believed that the intelligence was good enough that we'd be able to go in and locate the guy and get him surrounded. And maybe it could take as much as a year or two. God only, nobody knew that Pakistan was working in secret with the Taliban, and that they would smuggle the guy out and they would hide him in a hidden mansion in Pakistan for all that time. Well, we're getting all of our people killed over there. So it was horribly handled, but I understand the justification for it. I never understood the justification for Iraq, and I don't understand liberals today who are going around and saying, "Oh yeah, we need to be fighting in Ukraine," and things like that. It's like a reversal of what people used to believe.
Yeah. So you wrote an article about a week ago, about I'm kind of changing the subject here, maybe not too, about Marjorie Taylor Greene and the things. And so she basically put a motion into to vacate Mike Johnson's
Yeah.
tenure. And what's what's with the Republicans? First of all, people have to understand this. When Gallagher leaves, they're only going to have a majority of one single seat,
Right.
and so so okay, all right. You have a precarious apple cart that's absolutely basically just teetering on the edge, and she says, "Oh well, let's just topple it over." I don't understand what's going on here. How come these people can't get their shit together?
That's why I was only half kidding when I said somebody should file a motion to vacate Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah,
Um, be, I mean, what this guy did by picking the date that he was leaving, it was a scumbag move.
yes,
All
it
right.
was. That's right.
Because if he had just left the day he said it, they could have had a special election and
Right.
we could have got the seat back. He's purposefully picking a date so the seat's going to remain open until next year,
Yeah.
you know. So I think that was a scumbag move,
And do
but
you
that
hold it,
doesn't
hold it.
mean the solution
Jazz, do you have
is.
any idea why he did it that way?
I think it was a temper tantrum. Yeah, I think
Huh?
it was intentional and deliberate. He was very angry about the way things were playing out. He is absolutely a never Trumper, and he doesn't like the MAGA shift or anything like that. And but all the fighting that's been going on, I don't think he was even that supportive of a lot of the House committees that have been trying to investigate the Democrats and things like that. But a lot of it came down to Ukraine, Israel, all those things, because that's what everybody's upset about. And we all want to support Israel, well,
Well,
everybody on the right does.
80% of us, yeah,
Um,
right.
not the Democrats don't. Well, even some of them do. It's a minority, but a very loud minority of Democrats. But the Ukraine thing has really turned into a bone of contention, and I think that was a big part of it for him. And he could have stayed and finished out his term, you know, and doesn't mean he had to cooperate with anybody. He could just showed up for the votes and vote however you want, I mean, everybody
Yeah.
gets to vote how they want. But no, he would rather leave, take his ball and go home, and leave the seat empty and cut our majority down further. It was a scumbag move, but that doesn't justify what Marjorie Taylor Greene's doing.
No, it
And I
doesn't.
and I hope nobody listens to her
Well,
because
okay, but I gotta get back to this, yeah, a scumbag move, and then she pulls a scumbag move, and what I see is a bunch of people not acting like adults. And
yeah,
that just bugs the shit out of me. I can't tell you how much. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe we disagree, but basically, like you said, you don't necessarily have to like proactively even do the right thing. Just show up, vote a few times, and it's like it's not that hard. It
yeah,
isn't.
there's some things where they're going to disagree, but there's a bunch of other stuff that most of the right is on the same page, and you can just show up and cast some votes for stuff that you believe in. Should we cut taxes further? Should we reduce the spending? Try to get that under control. This is stuff that everybody on the right is on the same page. And now you just lost another vote that wouldn't have voted for every single thing, but probably the majority of it,
Do you know anything
and now
about
that's gone.
Jazz? Do you know anything about how Matt Gaetz operates? I've never been able to figure out if this guy's crazy or if he's a true patriot. I've never really been able to figure out. Do you got any opinion on this?
I think he's a crazy true patriot.
Oh, okay.
Um, and don't get me wrong, there's areas where Marjorie Taylor Greene says lots of stuff I agree with.
Oh, same here. I know.
You know?
I totally am totally with you on that. Yeah.
But I have a big problem with the House Freedom Caucus because they've sort of lost sight of the fact that if you can successfully win elections, if we'd had a red tide in 2022 and not barely a red trickle, and you've got 30 or 40 seats to play with, you know, you can have a caucus that is really, really far to the right, even on some stuff where moderate Republicans are not willing to tread, and you can still get stuff done.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We didn't have it at the beginning of this term, and it's just been getting smaller and smaller. And now we're down to basically nothing. The
Right.
Republicans have almost no power to get anything done without a Democratic stamp of approval. And
Yeah.
that's the reality that the current speaker is dealing with, which is my problem with Green, is that Johnson knows that in order to be taken seriously, in order for the voters to take the GOP seriously going into the next election, not just for the presidency, but for the congressional races, they can't look like the party of no 100% of the time. They can't look like the party that can't shoot straight, the party that can't get things done.
Yeah.
And so he's had to go along. The spending bill, I didn't like it. It was way too big. There's a lot of crap in there we didn't like. But if he had just shut the government down over it, the Democrats would have, and all of the media except maybe Fox would have rightly pointed to that and said, "Well, we didn't have to have this shutdown. You could have approved. There was a thing to approve."
Yeah.
And he made a calculated decision. It's like, no, a shutdown's going to hurt us more in the long run and hurt us in November. So we're going to go ahead and put this through. Hopefully, we win a big majority and get the presidency. We'll do better next year. But right now, we need to keep the ship afloat. I think that's the speaker's approach, and it produces results I'm not wild about. But you know what? I I think he's smart in that that's how you keep moving things forward. And we don't need the Freedom Caucus just, throwing grenades.
Yes. Well, so you and I are sitting here and we're talking about this, so we figured it out. How come they can't figure it out? I don't understand. I mean, seriously, am I just like a crazy person here? They're adults. I mean, what you said to me is so plainly obvious that I don't understand why they would even think anyone would think otherwise.
I think a lot of them have figured it out. It's not the entire GOP caucus that's gone crazy. It's a handful of people. But again, that's what we are just talking about. When you have a marginal one, a handful of people is a lot of people.
That's true. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yes.
And I hope someone has tried to take those people aside and just go, look, you need to calm your jets until November. Just get us over the finish line, and then we can have these debates. You know, I hope that's happened, but I have not heard any solid reports that it has happened.
So you wrote yesterday about the Transgender Day of Vengeance, which started out as a Transgender Day of Visibility and
Right.
and seems to have been deliberately put on Easter. Now, okay, here's where I'm at on this. I have known one legitimately transgender person in my life, truly transgender, had a sex change, worked out great for a former woman who's now a man. I mean, anybody who knew this guy knows he did the right thing. Okay, but the problem is, and what I say pretty much say all the time is that every single loopy Democratic liberal leftist concept has some kernel of truth in it. And the kernel of truth is that transgenderism is real. The problem is the vast majority of people who say they're transgender are nuts. Okay, and I'm just going to put this out there right now. So, and you basically alluded to this in the two articles you wrote. We we are these they're basically holding the society hostage. I mean, you know, I mean, you said in the article about the fact that at this point it's approaching violence, and yes, it is.
I I have, just so people don't think I'm speaking entirely in a vacuum, I have an older cousin who did a lot of babysitting for me when I was in middle school and early high school. So big part of my life that I grew up with. And she, at the time, um, was gay. She was a lesbian. I knew her girlfriend.
Yeah.
Wonderful people. Never had a problem with them. And I left. I joined the Navy. I went away. We lost touch. Didn't really talk for a number of years. And then there were things going on that nobody ever told me about. I came home, and one day she was now named Tim and had done just what you said, had gone through the whole thing. You and I disagree because I still think she was a very authentic, genuine person when I knew her as a gay woman. And that's how she was born. So I do not agree with you that transgenderism is real. I think it's very real that people get something in their heads and start believing something that's not physical reality.
Yeah, but
Because
hold
I
on.
think
Are you and I
I think
saying the same?
biology is
Are we
reality.
saying the same thing in two different ways? I mean, yeah, I'm acknowledging the fact that, like I said, that my friend or acquaintance actually, I mean, uh, did something that was ultimately positive for him, and it sounds like that's you. Are you saying this about your cousin or whatever it is?
Tough question. Ultimately, how do you define ultimately positive?
I
You've
don't know.
made
That's true.
surgical changes that are irreversible, and I've never had the opportunity to sit down with him, whatever you
Yeah,
want to say, and just now in your 70s, did you ever have any regrets? That's a question I would like to ask. You know, but she was someone who was never going to have kids anyway, so losing that ability wouldn't impact her as much.
yeah,
Um, because she was a lesbian, and she seems happy enough. So maybe, but I think if even if that's true, it's probably the exception because you hear from all the people who come out and are finally starting to do interviews and have written op-eds and things like that. The people who do have regrets and are seeking to detransition, and some of them have detransitioned as much as they can. Um, if they catch it when they did nothing other than maybe puberty blockers and hormones, they can come back. But the ones who went the full distance, like your acquaintance and my cousin, there's no coming back from that. I mean,
no,
that's forever, you know.
right.
And if these detransitioners have regrets, I have to wonder if the other ones do too. But they're just like, well, stuck with it now.
Yeah,
So the I don't have that experience, that human experience myself, so I can't say with any authority. I'm just offering opinions,
right.
you know.
No, that's what I want from you. That is, but we're in agreement that at least the vast majority of these people are nuts, right?
Well, yeah, and I don't even want to say it as nuts. I
Oh, I
think it
don't. I know.
is
I'm
a
talking
mental
colloquially. Yeah.
illness, and it
Right.
was classified as a mental illness
Yes.
for ages. It was
Yes.
in all the medical journals. It was classified as a delusional mental illness, and there's
Yeah.
lots of them beyond that, you
Right.
know. And they have treatments for all of them, and they used to treat this, but the treatments they're offering are not treatments that were ever, in the most case, designed to deal with that what used to be considered a problem. Excuse me, gassy. But like the purity blockers they give, there's one of the 7 drugs that they issue to children that is actually a puberty blocker. It was only ever approved by the FDA to treat a condition known as precocious puberty, when sometimes as early as 5 to 7 or 8 year old starts going through puberty way too early, and that causes a huge number of problems. And so they developed drugs that would hold off puberty. The rest of the drugs they give as puberty blockers are cancer drugs. Okay. They
Uh
were
huh.
only ever approved to treat 2 types of cancer. They were given to women with breast cancer where tumors were aggravated by the presence of estrogen, and the tumors would grow faster. And if you could shut down the estrogen production, then it would stop the growth of the tumors, and it would give them a lot longer to be treated and possibly even save their life. Same thing with men with prostate cancer and testicular cancer. Some of those tumors get aggravated by testosterone, and they develop drugs that could block the production of testosterone. But that's what they were intended for, radical cases of lethal cancer.
Yeah.
And now they're handing them out to kids that have perfectly healthy bodies like candy. That's a problem, man.
Oh, for
As far as
sure.
I'm concerned,
I
it's a
I don't totally
huge
agree with you.
problem.
I don't, not to mention the fact that kids are so impressionable, and that's what's happening. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the surveys. The number of kids in high school who's quote being quote unquote queer, which is basically anything other than heterosexual, has gone up in the last 5, 10 years dramatically. Well, that's not a natural thing. I mean, the one reason I've always been supportive of the gay community is because not just that gayness goes back 2,000 years, but most animals have gay populations. And there's no politics involved in that. If a sloth in Australia wants to be gay, nobody's. It's not because anybody. It's not because of anything anybody's telling them. That's and so that seems very legitimate to me. But the transgender community, besides the fact that even if it's real, it's extremely small. That's the thing. And these people have kind of sort of completely taken over our societal. I mean, well, you mentioned it in your article. I mean, they're on the verge of espousing violence at this point. This is
Not
crazy.
not just on the verge, some of them are going to violence. We've already
Yeah,
had shootings and a whole bunch of stuff. No, I've long been annoyed by the way that the left has just accepted that we went from LGB and they added the T on there, like, oh, we're all part of one club. Um, I, People that haven't been following my writing for a long time, going back more than a decade when the whole gay marriage thing was going on, I was one of the few conservatives that was out there writing in favor of gay marriage
yeah,
because first of all, and I'm opposed to even gay conversion therapy. There have always been gay people. They're
correct.
in the Bible.
Right,
Okay,
right.
as long as there are records, there's there's either always been gay people or they've been doing one hell of a job faking it for thousands of years.
That's
You
right.
know,
Uh huh.
so I'm not buying that. But no, the trans thing is entirely new, and there's only a few records like from ancient Greece of women who converted to be men so they could be pharaoh after their husband died. But I think that was a political thing more than,
Yeah.
what we're seeing now. So I was never opposed to gay marriage because I was just like, so you're gay. Okay, I'm not gay, but to each their own. So as you're not
Right.
bothering anybody who doesn't want to be bothered, help yourself. Um,
Well, well,
but yeah, but this situation is very, very different, and it's become so politicized, and it's getting woven into laws all over the country, and it's made this huge division. Right now, it's 24-26. 24 of the states have laws banning um, uh,
different.
trans procedures on minors, and 26 of them don't.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like it's turned into this red blue divide on something that just strikes me like there should be a lot more common sense involved here because this
Yes,
isn't
and
science.
I don't know if I'm very connected to the gay community because I used to work for a gay organization, believe it or not. I'm not gay, but I did. And my sense talking to my gay friends is that the gay community is quietly, they're rebelling against this. They don't want the T attached anymore. I mean, this is what, privately what I'm getting, under the radar kind of. But I think people are getting really pissed off about this whole thing. When I mean people, I mean actually members of the LGB community. It's like,
Wha- One of my oldest friends that I've known for more than 30 years and still comes up and visits us regularly is, I almost said was, a lesbian, although oddly enough, she's married and has two kids. That's a long story for another day.
Yeah.
But she's gay, and they've made it work out. God bless them.
Right.
Um, she's really angry about this. She's not a public political person. She doesn't write or publish things, but she talks about it, and she's just completely frustrated because she's like, we fought forever to at least have women's sports to ourselves, and look what's happened. And that's her big thing, and she's
Yeah.
really angry about that. I don't think she gives a damn if anybody wants to go around and dress how they want to dress, or
Yeah.
say, these are my pronouns. But when it starts getting put into law and people are getting shoved into or out of bathrooms and showers, or being put in sports competitions, that drives her nuts. And so, yeah, I think the gay community, particularly more so among the actual females, than the males, they do have a big problem with it, and maybe that's going to grow. I don't know if it's going to show up at the ballot box or not.
Yeah. I don't either. I want to move on. Uh,
Yeah, because I know we're
Jazz?
about out of time here.
Yeah, because we only have a few minutes left here. So what I wanna address the UFO stuff at the end here. And so here's my take recently. I don't have any news, and I don't know if you've written any either. I looked around, I haven't seen any were written anyway. But do you get the impression, especially with the last report that the Pentagon put out about the UAPs, I'm starting to think that the military is trying to stuff the genie back in the bottle. Like all the stuff that happened in 2017 and 2020, it's like, okay, the UFOs are real, whatever. It's almost like they're trying to make it go away. Are you under that impression?
Oh, absolutely. And I haven't been writing a lot about it because there haven't been any huge breakthroughs, but I follow it every day
Uh-huh.
very closely. Sean Kirkpatrick was, in my opinion, and he was for those who don't follow it, he was the head of uh, ATIP, the Pentagon UFO office, until fairly recently. He was an undercover agent, not working for disclosure. He was working for the Pentagon, and they spent a long time developing that quote historical report that they put out. And everybody that's analyzed that report, number one, it was riddled with just plain factual errors from the documentation that's available in government files.
Yeah.
Tons of errors. They did not talk to the people they needed to talk to. Some of the people refused to talk to him because they didn't trust him. He never spoke to David Grush. He
Yeah.
never spoke to a lot of the other whistleblowers. Some of them wanted to talk to him and offered. Others were just like, no, this guy's working for the people that are trying to hurt us. We're not going to do that.
Well,
But they've
Jazz,
been talking to members of Congress. So, yeah, I think that's what the Pentagon is trying to do. I think they are going to wind up face palming on this.
Jazz, were the errors deliberate?
I don't think so. They look sloppy.
Uh-huh.
It was a lot of the errors were things like they were quoting old reports from the Blue Book days, investigations into because it was a historical report, investigations into Roswell. They got the names of some of the witnesses, including military officers, wrong. They got the quotes wrong. They had the dates wrong in a number of cases. And I'm not saying that's a complete deal breaker, but this is a government office. You were given ages to put this report together, and this is information that's been out there forever. And they put out something that was very sloppily assembled. And then they drew a conclusion from it with providing no evidence. Like, oh no, we didn't see anything that would suggest anything about extraterrestrials. That was their conclusion. And they had a guy sitting there waiting to talk to him going, hey, I've seen the spacecraft.
Yeah,
I
right.
saw the bodies,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, but it's not even mentioned. It's not like, oh, this guy told us this, but we went and checked it out, and it turned out it was actually a piece of a weather balloon and a crash test dummy. They could have at least tried that,
Yeah.
but they just ignored it entirely,
Yeah.
you
So,
know?
you and I have talked a lot about this, and I am under the impression, I think you are too, that there's a preponderance of circumstantial evidence that says we have these crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. But when it comes to Roswell, I have to admit, I'm not totally sold on the fact that Roswell's legit. I'm not. I think there's a possibility. If I had to put money on it, I'd still put money on the fact that they had crashed ET spacecraft, but I think there's a possibility that was some super secret government top secret covert project, and they never wanted it to come out. I mean, have you?
I've heard all those theories, and I have to agree. I think it's too old. Too many of the records are just too dusty, too far in the past. We don't know for sure. I'm more interested in the far more recent stuff.
Yeah, same here.
You know,
Yeah,
it's like, you know what else they never mentioned in that gigantic report that ATIP put out? They didn't mention the Tic Tac. They didn't mention the gimbal. That's the most recent stuff. We have video, we have radar data, we have pilots who are still
yeah.
alive who went and testified. They didn't even mention it.
That's for my
And
very point about the fact about them trying to
that's
stick the genie back in the bottle. It's like they're just
exactly.
ignoring it.
And Susan Goff is just, you know, pumping the same. I've been dealing with Susan Goff for 7 years now,
You've actually
and
talked to her, right?
I've only spoken to her on the phone once. It's almost all by email. She
Okay.
doesn't do interviews and
Yeah.
things. But I was the one who first, as far as I know, was the first to learn how to pronounce her name, because for a long time we were all saying "go" or "gow" or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But it's Goff. And no, she's a dutiful soldier for the people who want to make sure nobody knows about this or talks about this, and she's always coming up with the same excuses. But the last thing, and I know we're out of time. Notice that they said we found no evidence of extraterrestrial blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
I would like everybody to keep in mind every time that David Grush has spoken about this. Whenever anybody says extraterrestrial, he stops them and corrects them and
Yes.
says, "I didn't say extraterrestrial. I
That's
said
correct.
non-human."
Right.
And when he gets asked about it on the rare occasions where he gets pressed, he's like, saying extraterrestrial implies we know where it's from. We don't know. It might be. It also might be interdimensional. He's used that word.
Yeah.
It could be time travelers. What we have no proof that that's possible, but maybe somebody a million years in advance can do it. Who knows, right? But they don't come out and deny NHI. They don't deny non-human until they just came out and said no proof of extraterrestrials. They didn't say no possibility of extraterrestrial. They said no proof.
Right.
In a way, if you stop and think about it, that lines up exactly with what Grush has been saying.
Yes.
Yeah, we saw something, and we're not going to tell you that we have no friggin' clue what it is, but we can't prove it's extraterrestrial because maybe they really don't know where it comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I tell you what, let's leave it at that. I got way
Sure.
more questions, but shit, I can talk forever. So,
Oh, anytime, man. Have me back. You can skip all the political stuff. I can talk for 2 hours about UFOs anytime anybody wants.
that's good to know. We might actually do that. So thank you. I appreciate
All
it.
right.
All right. You take care. All right. I'll see
Take
you.
care.
Thank you. That's our friend Jazz Shaw. He is the weekend editor at hotair.com. And he's as you caught at the end there, he's the UFO guy for the Salem Media Properties. When that thing came out in the New York Times in December 2017, Jazz said on a previous show where we interviewed him, he said, well, I went to my bosses and said, can I write a story about this? And he said they were highly dubious. And he wrote the story. And then when they when they realized how much traffic it got, they said, do you want to do more of this? Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll do that. And the other thing is now this is 2-3 months ago now. This is our 102nd show. We've been doing this for 8 months. It'll be 8 months on Monday, actually. We did a show about 3-4 months ago that was entirely devoted to UFOs, and I think we're going to do that again. I mean, Jazz just volunteered. We got enough people coming on. We got people we talked to. We had a really fascinating interview with the Bruce Rapuano on Tuesday. Guy's a neuroscientist. He claims he's been abducted by aliens, and he wrote a book called Dominion Lost. And there's a link to it on our show blog at jimandnight.com if you want to buy it. The book is essentially in 2 parts. The first part is his talks about his experiences. The second part, as a scientist, he ends up basically it's conjecture on his part, and it is speculation. I mean, he completely admits that, on how these spacecraft fly, and also why they're abducting people. So, in 25 words or less, the spacecraft fly by highly advanced technology. Duh. But the more important thing is that he thinks they're abducting humans, as a lot of other people do, because they're collecting DNA to essentially create a hybrid race. That's what he thinks. And he thinks they took DNA from him too. Now, I asked him, and this is kind of, I thought this was an interesting question, forgive my arrogance, but I did. And that is, if your technology, now you stop and think about this. And I brought this up many times. You've only had your iPhone for less than 20 years. Matter of fact, I think, 17, right? You've had your iPhone for 17 years. Your iPhone, I still remember I bought my first PC in July of 1989, and I bought it at Sears, believe it or not. And I paid, this is not for the monitor, this is just for the computer. It had a 10 meg hard drive. No, not 10 gigs, 10 megs, and a 10 meg hard drive. And I paid $2,000 in 1989 money for it. That would be now about $4,000 or $5,000. Now, the cell phone you have in your pocket. And I mentioned this last week. I went to Micro Center to buy some stuff, actually for the show, some equipment. And I went to look. Like to look around, So I'm looking at the cell phones there. Now there's a company named Blue, BLU. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They make cheap, reliable Android cell phones. You can get a Blue cell phone, a new one, unlocked for $70. You can get even a better one for like 120. Now that's about 10% the price of a really good iPhone. Now, and it's not that, you're not going to set any speed records with this goddamn thing. But the fact is, it works. It has all the features that any other Android phone has. And the reason I brought all that up is because that $70 cell phone is about 1,000 times more powerful than the PC I bought in 1989 for the rough equivalent of $5,000 contemporary. That's how things change. So now the reason I brought all that up is you extrapolate that out 10,000 years, right? And so it's who's to say what we can or can't do. My question actually to Bruce was, if your technology is that advanced, couldn't you just manufacture DNA? And he said something really interesting. I really think there's something to do this. He said, well, you need to randomize it. And in some ways, it might actually be easier to take it from real humans than to actually create random patterns over and over again. And he's right about that. It might actually be easier. I mean, and you're thinking, well, where you fly 37 light years to get here? But no, if your technology is that advanced, it might actually be easier to pick the humans up and scoop the DNA out and drop them off in their bed. And the interesting thing about Bruce is that, and this needs to be emphasized, he's never been under hypnosis or regression or any of that sort of stuff. Everything he's remembered about these experiences have been conscious memories. He was not asleep during any of them. There was a couple times he was dragged out of bed, but he swears to God he was awake. You know, so um, yeah, so yeah, they're taking DNA from humans to make a hybrid brace, and then on the part about how the spacecraft fly, he gets into all sorts of stuff. He gets into the quantum physics, quantum mechanics. I'll I gave him during the interview a backhanded compliment, but it was still a compliment, and that is this book, especially the scientific part, is actually it's not an easy read, but he made the science as easy as can be made under the circumstances. There's no formulas or anything like that. You don't earn math. You don't have to worry about that sort of shit. But some of the concepts are pretty complex. We've talked about and he always he is an Albu. I can never remember the guy's name, the Mexican physicist who's essentially come up with a theory of what everybody calls colloquially warp drive. because it's this kind of sort of how the Enterprise would fly in Star Trek. Uh, and this guy's come up with this, and Bruce and I were talking too about you should go back and watch this. It's a fascinating interview. It really is. Bruce and I were talking about the fact that, all right, Albuquerque is his name, Manuel or Miguel, about how the theory is sound, but it would take an obscene amount of electricity to actually make that work. I mean, some people said using this theory to get a small two-seater flying saucer, 30 feet in diameter to fly, you'd actually need more electricity than is generated by the entirety of humanity on Earth. It'd be pretty tough. But and we talked about this in the interview too. Bob Lazar said in 1989, 1990, 92, when he said he worked on these spacecraft at Area 51, he said they ran off of element 115, and that's plausible. Now, when he said that in 92, when Lazar was talking about that, we didn't have element 115. I don't, if I'm right, I mean, I'm pulling this stuff out of my butt, folks, so forgive me if I'm wrong. I think we discovered element 115 in 2006. But not only did he know about it, but he also knew that there was an isotope version of it that was stable. And Lazar knew that, and that turns out to be absolutely correct. So I don't know how that's something you couldn't like pull out of your butt and just guess. So, any rate, um, why did I bring all that up? I brought that all up because yeah, we need to do another dedicated UFO night here. Now I'm going to leave you with this. There's a paratrooper in Britain, and in Britain, paratroopers are basically the they are the equivalent of our in America our Green Berets. So this guy's, this is kind of the cream of the crop. He in the military, in the Royal Army and Air Force. He is the one of the cream guys. He says that a friend of his who works there's actually a level of of specialist that goes above paratrooper. This would be above Green Beret. These are extremely elite people. And he said that this guy's told him, a friend of his, that in the 1980s he was sent off to northern England to retrieve a crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. That they did that, and he said that not only did they retrieve the spacecraft, but it was obvious that the occupants literally ran off into the woods. And he said they went off and chased them. Now, he did not say if they found them or captured them. He said, matter of fact, he said he didn't know, because he was there, but he didn't know that part of it. But they did retrieve this crashed spacecraft, and the Englishmen, they did what they did with that. So that's just made the news recently. Jazz alluded to this. There's not a lot of new stuff that happens in the space, so sometimes I kind of have to stretch a little bit to find stuff. But it's an interesting space nonetheless. Now, folks, I got to tell you this. I'm going to end with this tonight, and you have to know, you have to understand this. The Earth is being visited by non-human beings from other planets. There's no doubt about that. You can tell me I'm crazy. You can go on and on and on, but I'm going to tell you this right now: you're wrong, and I'm right. And there are a whole bunch of people who do this for a living, and even that don't. It's just, like Jazz actually does report on this for a living. Now, and I have to say, I have Bruce gave me a very big compliment. He wrote me an email after he said, "I didn't realize you knew so much about the subject." And yeah, I do. I know a shitload about the subject. There's few people in this space that know more about the UFO phenomenon than I do. Now, Jazz is actually one of them because Jazz says one thing I don't have, and that is I don't have a conduit to the Pentagon. He talks to people there regularly, as he alluded to at the end of the interview. So I don't have that. So I get information, although I do end up finding out about this stuff. I don't get it as quickly as he and a few other people do. So that's my little, if you want to call it, Achilles heel of information here. But I've been studying this for 30 years, and I hardly ever hear a story I haven't heard in the past. So anyway, yeah. But I'm telling you this right now. You have to come to terms with this. We are being visited by extraterrestrials. There's just now. How many of them are here, whether they're living among us, that I don't know. Nobody really knows. There's two conflicting theories and parallel universes on this. Some people think that the government knows that ETs actually are living among us and passing off as humans. Okay, fine. I guess I could buy that, but I have no proof of it. I just don't know. Then there's the other thing that there's a school of thought that yeah, we've got these crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft and we've never figured them out. There's that too. That we have no information other than the fact we have them. That Bob Lazar, what he learned in 1992 is the farthest we've ever gone. We've never figured it out in the last 30 years. So there's that also. So I don't, I can't tell you, there's people say, oh, the government knows about this. I don't know. You know, with the guy named, is his name Chaim Eshem, if I'm right, who was the director of defense, the secretary of defense for Israel. He says he wrote a book on this. This guy is not crazy. Matter of fact, he got this job. He's one of the foremost scientists in Israel. He says the Israeli government has been in touch with aliens for at least 20 years. That's what he says. Now, I have no idea whether he's telling the truth or not, but he is a person who doesn't have any impetus to lie. So, yeah. At any rate, but I can tell you that for sure. We are being visited by people from other planets. That's happening. So get used to it. And we have people on this show regularly to talk about it too. I just at this point I kind of consider it's part of my mission of what we do here to for lack of a better term expose this stuff. Now we're going to call it a night, and with that we're going to call it a week. On Monday we have our month in review panel. That's Tim Conaway, Don Zorro, Larry Newman to join us. We shoot the shit for an hour about all sorts of stuff. I've already started a list because that's what I do. I make lists. I make lists, and then I get on here. I talk about it. It's like, oh shit. And of course, it's just completely disorganized, and I forget stuff all the time. I mean, you don't even want to know. It's not easy being me. And a friend of mine, an old friend, a childhood friend, said, "No," he said, "I've seen your show. It's really easy being you." Okay, all right, fine. So yeah, we got next one Monday month in review. Then we're taking the rest of the week off. After that, we're coming back the following Monday, April 8th. So, and what are we doing? I'll tell you what we're doing. We're installing a new camera, new lights in the studio. So, this camera has not been bad, but there's certain things going on. I want a better one, and also the lighting here. We finally, I fucked with this for 2 weeks before we started at July 31st, and we fucked with it for another month after that before we finally got it straight. But for better, I'm adding some actually. We're not actually even changing anything. We're adding lights. We get that picture a little better. So I like gear. What can I tell you? I just do. So we can do it, so we're doing it. So that's the deal. So anyway, I hope you guys have a nice weekend. I want to thank our sponsor, Conk News. Uh, they're they're fantastic. Check that out at conk.com, news aggregator, CONK.com. Check them out. It's free, totally. You don't even have to register. You'll get a whole bunch of news, and it's all from different places, so you get a real balance. You don't get one particular point of view um, at all. So anyway, check that out. I hope you have a good weekend. Like I said, I'm going to have a good weekend. We're going to be back on Monday. Good night, Uncle Donnie. Good night, Esperanza. And good night to you wherever you are. Take care, folks. I'll see you.